Abloh-Isms, Virgil Abloh. Edited by Larry Warsh. Princeton University Press, Princeton and Oxford in association with No More Rulers. Introduction. Virgil Abloh has operated under many titles: creative director, fashion designer, DJ, architect, engineer, and artist, to name a few. But to define him is to miss the point. Abloh exists in the in-between, the gray area, challenging and defying the confines of conventional categorization. He has invented a world in which the hierarchies and divisions between fashion, art, music, and popular culture are no longer relevant. Both a disruptor and collaborator, Abloh has created the language that defines modern luxury, and has enlightened a generation. The quotes in this book, pulled from more than 50 interviews, lectures, and other primary sources, showcase the essence of Abloh's brilliant, sincere, and perceptive mind, addressing themes from his career in fashion and streetwear, his influences and methods, and his creative process. From his childhood in the suburbs of Chicago to his ascension to the role of artistic director of menswear at Louis Vuitton, Abloh has proven himself to be one of the most culturally important figures of our time. Abloh's early life placed him at the intersection of artistic and cultural movements, popular art and conceptual art. Born in 1980s Chicago, Abloh was part of the last generation to come of age, pre-internet, and flourished at the center of DJ, graffiti, hip-hop, and skateboard communities. Initially pursuing studies in engineering, Abloh switched gears when inspired by an art history class, specifically the Renaissance, and went on to complete a master's in architecture. In somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy, Abloh observed our culture pre- and post-internet, a new renaissance, and an early understanding of the internet, and an embrace of social media, became key to Abloh's rise. After completing his architecture degree, Abloh interned at Fendi with his friend and collaborator Kanye West, who he had been working with for nearly 10 years, to learn the intricacies of the world of high fashion. The pair quickly drew attention, piquing interest at Paris Fashion Week. Soon after, West hired Abloh as his creative director, working together toward his vision of merging rap, contemporary art, and high fashion, an entry point for Abloh into converging these many worlds at a grand scale. The two forged a close relationship, with West trusting Abloh, rather than the label's art department, to art direct the cover for his and Jay-Z's album Watch the Throne. Shortly after, Abloh launched his first brand, Pyrex Vision, which he shuttered a year later, but which served as an entry point to his next luxury streetwear label, Off-White. Within a short amount of time, the brand was widely embraced, worn by Jay-Z, Beyoncé, A$AP Rocky, and Rihanna, among others. Only 5 years later, he was named the artistic director of menswear at Louis Vuitton, and was the subject of a major exhibition at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. Abloh's work widely embraces intersections, references, and influences from Marc Jacobs and Vanessa Beecroft to Miles Davis, James Brown, and Jean-Michel Basquiat. He often recounts his own early aspiration toward luxury brands like Prada, Gucci, and Louis Vuitton, and his reverence of cultural brands, namely, like most teenage kids of his generation, Michael Jordan. Yet Abloh, leveraging social media, has opened the doors of luxury to previously ignored but interested communities, primarily the black community, and kids, creating a link between the culture that loves Jordans and luxury goods, and has yearned to be included in the narrative and in the luxury industry itself, which traditionally wanted little to do with hip-hop, sneakers, or black culture. Whereas luxury brands once held the power in taste-making, social media gave power to the voice of popular opinion, which put Abloh himself in power. While Abloh is not the first to create value for a pair of sneakers, he is one of the few who does it well, rivaled only by the value created in the art market. Yet industry conversations around the longevity of streetwear and sneaker products miss the point of Abloh's long-term impact. In fact, the obsession around what sells instead of what are we selling for is what made the luxury industry ripe for Abloh's disruption in the first place. As all parts of the industry now scramble to get their own grasp on collaborations, sneakers and streetwear, Abloh will always hold his place as the shaker that drove new luxury forward. Yet as explored in this book, Abloh has spoken against the idea of new, stating that it's designed to keep people like him out of industries like luxury. Ironically, the energy that Abloh brought to luxury fashion is perhaps the most refreshing the fashion industry has ever witnessed, and in spite of any criticism, this is where Abloh's true subversion lies. In reality, traditional luxury power holders and institutions were not positioned to understand the wave of disruption that Abloh was a part of. Many, if not most, still aren't. Abloh has, in many ways, transcended the term disruptor. Throughout his career, fueled by his energy to manifest change, he questioned the foundations of popular culture, inserted his ideas, and created cataclysmic changes to its DNA. It is within this transformed environment that he and those for whom he has paved the way are now able to create. As Abloh himself states, the word disruptor doesn't sit well with me because it's not articulating exactly my frame of mind. I stay away from words, I'm more about actions. Words are often just another box to be put in. Despite the many boxes in which he has been placed, fashion designer, architect, DJ, artist, and indeed disruptor at the core of Abloh's long-term legacy, the effects of which we are only beginning to see, is that he brought true authenticity and openness to the most exclusive societal mechanism, luxury. Larry Warsh, New York City, December 2020. Abloh-Isms. Early years. I'm this African kid, born in a suburban white neighborhood outside of Chicago, inspired by Guns N' Roses and NWA at the same time. I was African, and my dad worked on the docks and shipping logistics, and he got the bright idea to go to Chicago where they were exporting all these goods. And through sheer will, he managed to go there, get my mom there, and have this life for me there. But only when I was a teenager returning to Ghana to visit did I see this dynamic. Looking down the street and walking over exposed gutters, I realized that this is who I am. My mom was sewing when she was 8 years old, and she still sews today. So I grew up with her saying, "You don't buy clothes, you make the clothes." I have vivid memories of going back to Ghana and looking out the window and being super appreciative, but being like 12, like what if my dad hadn't made this one decision, to take this leap of faith to go to this new country? I would be the kid on the side of the street in Africa with no clue what was going on in the rest of the world. When I was younger, I was into DJing, graffiti, hip-hop, skateboarding, and I love it that now I can just take my passport and hop on a plane and go see what's up with those scenes everywhere. Being born in 1980, I was part of the last generation that was pre the internet, before the internet made all knowledge easily accessible. Information was guarded, slow, and very much propped up the gatekeepers and their rule books. I'd been in a way Americanized teenager, 1990s, skateboarding. I'm trying to identify with just being black. Until I was 17, I didn't know all that much. I was my most authentic self, I was just a sponge. I'm trying to revert to that point. That point is what I call the authentically real. Sometimes I still feel like the 17-year-old version of myself who didn't believe I could be a designer with a capital D. When I studied engineering at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, it was the humanities classes that I had put to the side that ultimately started me on this path of thinking about creativity in a much more cultural context, not designing for design's sake, but connecting design to the rhythm of what's happening in the world. I took an intro to art history. That's when the bulb went off. My parents weren't versed in art, and I thought art was a trophy or a symbol of wealth. Kanye and I are brothers for life. We started on the same mission of being kids from Chicago, trying to push beyond being boxed in and have music as our only form of expression to the world. Kanye is my mentor. I think he's a generation's mentor. Before I met him, I wasn't even interested in being creative. I thought I was just going to work some regular job. I was a kid that was buying streetwear t-shirts. I was DJing. I was learning graffiti from this book called Subway Art. These things are what made my aesthetic, so I decided not to forego those things as I got into my career. I decided to make a career that celebrated those exact things. My upbringing included zero art. Influences and inspirations. Pick your mentors and understand what makes their work tick. I've come from a specific set of mentors. Everyone from Vanessa Beecroft to George Condo to Tom Sachs. Marc Jacobs, an American, came along and made his own articulation of high and low, and somehow broke down the mystique and the barrier. That's my North Star. I considered Prada or Gucci or Louis Vuitton iconic. I loved those brands. I couldn't afford them, but I aspired to them. It was during my early days within architecture school that I was told that an architect should be a jack of all trades. That was all I needed to hear. From that point on, I realized that I did not need to ditch my love for Wu-Tang, Green Day, Alien Workshop, and Mies van der Rohe, etc., but proceed applying them all together. You have to have mentors, dead or alive. What most people won't tell you is that the people you look up to didn't invent it themselves. New is a farce to me. It's a critique intended to keep people like me out. I'm not trying to pretend that I'm inventing something that's never been seen before. My work exists because I'm inspired by the work of others. Any person you can cite, Steve Jobs, Karl Lagerfeld, Michael Jordan, they are not common names, because they did it 9 to 5. There are people on earth that dedicate themselves to their practice or whatever. I've always been like that. My mentor in the DJ space has been Benji B. My role models are my friends. I think one of the greatest contributions to black art is the invention of 2 turntables and a mixer. I used to DJ and get my hands on my dad's records, Fela Kuti to James Brown to Miles Davis. I was only into the fashion that intersected with the niche cultures I was into. My favorite fashion brands were skateboard companies like Alien Workshop, Santa Cruz and Drawers. A-Track was my idol, and I started out in turntablism. You know Rock Rada, Invisible Scratch Pickles, Mixmaster Mike. My cousin had a record shop, Deal Real in Soho, and that's where Kanye met A-Track. That's where I come from, like any teenager during those years, being interested in music and Technics 1200s and Vestax mixers. The one thing that the world could use is more role models. My role models are my friends. I'm constantly inspired by my friends and the people I surround myself with, and the cities that I'm traveling to. All the movements are made up by my brain trust. None of us sip the Kool-Aid. We're all individuals. We're all critics. We all look at things from a discerning eye, and I synthesize those things. Kanye West's album The Life of Pablo is like a DJ cheat sheet. It works everywhere, every time. To me, Kanye West is this generation's most important living artist. Fashion or music or pop culture, those things aren't broad enough terms to encapsulate someone who wakes up and lives and breathes it. Black influence has created a new ecosystem, which can grow and support different types of life that we couldn't before. I'm not that much of a basketball fan, but Michael Jordan sort of made me. I think that any guy that's born around the year 1980, anywhere around the globe, is affected by the brand of Michael Jordan. My friend Chris Eaton and I used to be so obsessed with Jordan that we were drawing Nike shoes and sending them to Nike. And Nike would be like, "Oh, we don't accept designs." The aesthetic of skateboarding comes from not being too informed, and that, to me, is authenticity. Simply seeing an advertisement will influence someone to buy, but it also speaks to a much larger context than that, what they believe in. The generation in New York City just before mine was one where the ideology of pop art was crashing together with conceptual art, right at the same time, and they were in turn building on the legacy of the previous generation, the legacy of someone like Duchamp. My generation was able to feed off all this, stir the pot, and mix in the sociological ramifications of what art is, and how it can break the barrier of high culture and relate to real life, regular people. I was 4 years into a 5-year engineering degree and about to go into structural engineering when I took an art history class that blew my mind. Studying the Renaissance completely rewired my brain. I started getting into the philosophy that the present, our generation grown up before and after the internet, may be a new Renaissance. I love the millennial spirit. They'll make an Instagram where they're goth, and the next week, they're dressing Harajuku. That's freedom. When I started, I couldn't beg a fashion writer to write about my project, but with Instagram, I took an open-source tool and made it my magazine. I once said to Kevin Systrom, Instagram co-founder, "You made it possible for me to have a fashion brand without using the traditional system." Instagram is a specific moment in time. It is the vehicle for how we as a global community share images. This will inevitably change, but for the moment this is our main channel to share globally. Some of its moral complexities are not the fault of the medium that we use to share. Instead, I think it is how the medium highlights some of our innate human tendencies that is sometimes alarming. I went to architecture school not to learn how to design buildings, but to design a spoon. Once I started learning the safeguards of the art and the design worlds, and what the prototypical artist or architect was, I learned that I needed to, in a way, be subversive, and to embed in my work the messages of what an African artist looks like, or what a black artist looks like. I think increasingly from this point forward, there are going to be moments and places where the public is going to interface with the questions of what is architecture, what is art. I was also going into the luxury stores because to me they were like museums. Critical discourse is important. I love critics. Bad design inspires me. Bad design makes you stop and question stuff. And sometimes, bad design might even be better. I'm exploring the self-endowed freedom to create. Everyday language, grammar, and my own personal philosophies are equal territory to mine as the art canon. I'm not looking towards a new demographic. I'm looking towards the demographic I came from. Streetwear, fashion and design. I'm an American black kid in fashion, making streetwear. That streetwear label is put on me. At first I rejected it, and then I sort of owned it, because I realized that I could redefine the term. I didn't make a conscious decision one day that I wanted to be a designer. I think that fashion should be politically aware, and anyway I can't make something that doesn't mean something. People want to judge the clothes, but before that I had to deliver a message about humanity. As soon as you put on one garment, it speaks to your personality. People need to experience what the brand means for the t-shirt to make sense. The inherent idea that clothes are what represents you gives us a palette to either be superficial or very curatorial with taste. It's an art form, You're either playing into fashion or you're reverting to it. Streetwear is an extension of a way of thinking about the physical world, and it's a way of making. It started from skateboarding, graffiti, street culture, but over time it has risen into a global movement within young people. Streetwear is a sentiment. Supreme is among my favorite brands for its art direction. It's connected to culture. The music playing in there. It's art direction. It's art. You're barely getting that at a high fashion brand. They should be charging me double for that. My career has been about learning and communicating emotion through design. I love fashion. It's like a petri dish, where all these different ideas converge. What's there to be insecure about? Life is the hard part. Fashion isn't. I have this brand Off-White, only to tell stories. I decided that Off-White, the name itself, could be a perfect metaphor for understanding that things are not so cut and dried. Nothing is single source. Nothing is black and white. Fakes don't bother me. The goal of Off-White is not to buy Off-White. It's to know about it. For me, design is about whatever I find is worthy to tell a story about. Of course, the history of fashion is important, but you can't say this dress that comes down the runway has relevance to the person, the homeless person, the regular person, walking to their 9-to-5 job. There has to be a conversation between consumption. I look at it from a generational perspective. If you ask your grandparents how many winter coats they may have 2 maximum. If you ask someone in their 30s, they may have 4. If you ask someone who is 17, they may have 6. Luxury fashion sells an image. That's what we do. It's neither authentic nor inauthentic. A designer is sifting through images so that people can buy into an idea. One of the true concepts of streetwear is using whatever means you have to make clothing. Ultimately, the consumer is more important than the gatekeeper. That's why streetwear has become so popular even in high fashion. There are so many consumers who know what's happening in high fashion, but high fashion looks down at them for not being worthy. As a fashion designer for an international luxury brand, you get control of the brand equity. Being inside of it, through their internal system, I have the chance to reach both tourists and purists, and to present my reasoning. In the past generation of high art and high fashion, it's like, put a wall around it, put a layer of mystique around it, keep it on a really tall white pedestal, put a vitrine box under it. It's what a gallery is, a white cube. But what all these kids have figured out is that what's happening outside the cube and on the street, whether it's graffiti or real life, is just as valuable as what's in there, and it's about zigzagging back and forth between the two. Something like luxury doesn't have to directly correlate to the European thing or money thing. I'm making a thing that a kid can consume and gain knowledge and perspective. Hierarchy is the human trait that gives license to absurd human behavior with no cause. That's what fashion, art, architecture, these hallowed layers, the last to conform, need to just be open-minded. I think that's the success of Off-White. I haven't made a distinction between the design world and the real world. I've just immersed myself in both. Does fashion have to be new? What is new anyway? Does fashion have to be new to be valid and relevant and important? People often lob "it's been done before" as a critique, but without asking themselves those questions. Newness has become the barometer by which we judge things in fashion. Does your jacket have 3 armholes? There are so many clothes that are cool, that are in vintage shops, and it's just about wearing them. I think that fashion is gonna go away from buying a box fresh something. It'll be like, hey, I'm gonna go into my archive. Fashion was a vehicle for my ideas. When I started, it was the easiest subway train to graffiti without a cop in sight. It is only one communicative device, one soapbox to stand on and speak from. All the arts have value. I can't imagine not scaling the heights of those that interest me and laying a foundation for future ideas. We have one life to live. I like that streetwear has a place. Because I came from outside of the fashion industry, I don't have the luxury of creating collections in a traditional way. I knew of fashion with a capital F as this thing that happened in far-off places that was intellectual, high culture, not for me, not for the masses. I thought of fashion as hard to describe, and it was supposed to be hard to describe, because there should be that barrier for it to feel important. I was very well aware that as a fashion designer, I was a square peg in a round hole. It's like someone who is really messy and tries to clean their place up to throw a dinner party. Everything is in order, but then you go to the bathroom, and you're like, why is there a cereal box in the bathtub? There's this insurmountable mountain of legends that precedes us, this guardianship that doesn't allow new to come in. It's often an old guard reinforcing the old days. I think Kendall Jenner, Gigi, and Bella Hadid and I are trying to bridge the gap between the old and the new. They're recalling the glory days of the biggest supermodels, but they are doing it in the modern way. I'm trying to do the same thing with design. Fashion is a great industry, but it's sort of asserted by an unknown voice. We all know it, and we all see those that are tuned into it. But that's my motivation, and I actually believe it doesn't matter. It's about an expression, a sort of feeling of I made it, or I'm here, I've arrived. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do is validate the genre that I'm put in, which is streetwear. Streetwear is like disco. When it started, disco was cool, but the term didn't age well, and neither did the genre. All of us who are classified as streetwear, it's up to us how it's defined, and that's why I hope the evolution of off-white is so apparent. The definition of off-white, it's the gray area between two concepts, streetwear and proper fashion. Fashion is an innovative process. You do it, and you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. That repetition sort of inspires a new approach every time. So it's just trying to become more precise. That way of designing to develop everything from zero comes from a different time. In Chicago, there's always been a relationship between black culture and luxury brands. People would do almost anything, even getting shot, for a jacket, a shoe. So I developed this pattern that references Duchamp, Corbusier, Martin Luther King, Dr. J. I'm using these because I thought that in fashion you always use these esoteric random things to mark the brand as luxury. And I was like, instead, let these be a gateway. Let someone be inquisitive and learn. I thought high fashion should have more intellect. I thought that this was an industry where art could be merged with critical discourse. There was this message board for the downtown scene at the time called Splay, and if you weren't involved with it you couldn't message on it, you could only view it. But everyone was on it. Aaron, Roxy Cottontail, Leah from Married to the Mob, the whole Orchard Street retail mafia. Fashion only addresses the small square footage in someone's living space, which is usually the most amount of money per square inch. You are buying clothes that add up, but what about the rest of the living environment? I'm interested in what the future living space looks like. You know, from a Le Corbusier sense, the home is a machine for living. That framework, where a bedroom is just as much as a kitchen, just as much as a living room, as a closet. What we do is called design. It's not limited to being called streetwear. Design is design. The moral of the story is beware of whatever box you're labeled as. Challenge it, defy it. Do not be defined by it. I decided if streetwear was going to be the sign of the times, I was going to define it rather than be defined by it. Streetwear's time will be up. In my mind, how many more t-shirts can we own? How many more hoodies? How many sneakers? I would definitely say streetwear is going to die. Right now I think we're stuck in the ways of the first generation of streetwear that is based on exclusivity. That doesn't matter anymore. Any kid that wants it doesn't care if 1 million people have it, they still want it. I'm not a fan of people waiting in line and not getting product. I am generally disinterested in sneaker culture. Disinterested by the fact that when a cool sneaker comes out, I have no idea how to get it. I don't have the time to figure it out. There are more shoes trying to fill the bigger demand, but there's not that same multiplier of cool creativity that comes from the likes of Supreme, Palace, Stash, and Futura. Literally, there's like 5 people that are in their own space that have something to offer this multiplicity. It went from 100 to 10,000 to 100,000. The scene has transcended the sneaker itself. The street is where you get the relevant ideas to real people. You can go to a job interview in a hoodie. You shouldn't be hired depending on whether or not you have the right costume or the right persona. Clothes are just tools to make a collage about yourself, so that people can understand what you know. As a designer, you get confronted with the term of your generation, which you have no control over. A piece of clothing is more important than the fabric it's made of. It's representative. It means something. I don't care if my aesthetic creeps into Foot Locker. It's my job to come up with the next idea after that. I want to be in the space that incubates new design ideas, and then that can just trickle down into the marketplace. That's my approach. It's like the concept car in an auto show. It actually doesn't work as a car, but it looks like it could, and it serves needs that aren't practical. I'd like to see that mentality in all different disciplines, and sneakers is one where I can particularly exercise that train of thought. That line has been crossed. Enough shirts have been sold, and enough Instagram posts have changed the ecosystem. So you can't go back. What we are actually doing is showing the fashion world that American men, let alone black men, know how to really get busy when it comes to the fashion game. We can't be erased. Off-White was great for my consciousness because it gave me my own realm. For all of my collaborative projects, the unit has a say, but now I have a platform to have an idea, not second-guess it and share it with the world. I feel like it has extended my life, because if the world builds up it could exist long after me. I want to create on the highest platform. I want to go to the Fashion Olympics. Point of view. From my perspective, I'm trying to stand for a generation. You know, each generation has designers who go along with it. I think it's explicitly the fact that I split my time among many things that gives me the point of view to know what I'm doing is relevant. I've realized that being contradictory is more authentic than being consistent. In a way, I'm still the kid that thinks that Nike will never call. I am the same person now as I was in high school. I like the consistency. I am a little bit too old to be a millennial, but I went to enough school to be able to understand it. I keep myself young like a fountain of youth. The only thing I feel like I really am is an architect. I am inherently linked to the time that I was born into, a time rooted in contemporary art and the subcultures of hip-hop, skateboarding, and graffiti. Where you were born gives you your access point to make things, or think things. I'm just an assistant to the people that came before me, trying to add to the design that goes forward for the next generation to continue. I came into this being born in America, identifying with being African. What I look at in the mirror, what my people look at, is drastically different from the messaging I've been consuming. African doesn't equal that you're a singer, you're a basketball player. I come from this design world. I came into this being born in America, identifying with being African. What I look at in the mirror, what my people look at, is drastically different from the messaging I've been consuming. I always had in my mind that an architect with a capital A or a designer with a capital D was somebody other than me. Those kind of people never looked like me. Take the 10 biggest architects of all time, not too many of them are black and from Illinois. Being too consistent is a sham. It's fairy tale. It's not real. Human beings are naturally at odds with themselves. We say one thing, we feel and do something else. Understanding that has been super liberating. Diversity brings to mind people from different backgrounds holding hands. I say, fuck that. It's too small-minded. I'm not even into the construct of race. It's a dead end for me. Screw skin color. My generation is all about irony, about humor and piss-taking. Our generation is rapidly unthreading every notion that generations in the past agreed upon. Questions about the environment, consumerism, value, necessity, health, etc. Plastic is now a curse word. Cigarettes are as taboo as cocaine. Everything is being questioned, which I imagine makes a better time for an artist to introduce new ideas. In the years between 2009 and now, a new consumerism has emerged. No one owns anything anymore. I think Chicago is a place where you can find your voice without having to proclaim that voice. And there's a strong socio-political lineage with the huge South Side, which forced black communities to organize. You either believe in the doomsday scenario or you want to affect change, and what we see in an Obama or an Oprah, that strikes a chord on the positive side with a number of us who are from there. People like me were marginalized in the fashion establishment. When I started 4 years ago, I was on the fringe because what I was doing was too new. The attitude was like, this is not even fashion. What are you doing, putting jeans on the runway? Being a black American in Paris fashion, there's no context for someone like me, no path to follow. If I was Japanese, I'd know how I'd fit into the system, same if I was Belgian or even American and white. But I don't know any other black kid who designs clothes and shows in Paris, do you? I personally feel pretty much in the middle of all extremes in America. Please treat all races, all humanity, in a respectful way. I've never been one that felt like the doors were closing. I'm an optimist, so I don't even recognize that. That's how I got to where I'm at. I shy away from giving myself a title, but I do like the idea of picking creative director. I think our generation has learned that more stuff isn't necessarily necessary. It's how we use and how we attach ourselves to the things in the world that are important. Evolution is as obvious as it is natural. I'm sort of in this midlife phase where I'm pondering becoming more content sitting on a couch. As a workaholic, that's the central conundrum. I'm sort of absorbing these milestones in my career, but I'm also welcoming the idea that, yeah, maybe I don't travel so much. Maybe I don't take on as many projects. Maybe I spend more time at home with my kids. Now that I see what my trajectory is, who knows? I might be open to being boring. DJing is my only peace of mind. I'll be DJing after I'm done designing or doing anything else. I'm just a kid, really. Methods. I use collaboration as a medium to experiment. The best thing with Off-White is that no two seasons have to look the same. There's no linear continuity. I removed that from the DNA. I often use the phrases tourist and purist to describe my approach to work. The purist knows everything about art history, every museum in every country, and what's going on across the world. And the tourist, in this context, well, they know what a dookie chain actually is. When an artwork moves effortlessly from the tourist pages of the NY Post to the most purist eyes, then you do have a truly unifying moment. Those moments come only when stars align. The general recipe: 1 part desire, aka reason for existing. 1 part provocation of convention, the unraveling of the accepted facts of the current time period, by a new generation. 1 part the notion that an everyday object is an art object regardless of the context, stir with a whisk of minimalism that reduces the sum of all of these parts down to a clear and transparent final product that communicates the process of its creation to the viewer, whether they are a tourist, a newcomer to art elitism, or purist, seasoned elitist. When I started my first brand, I bought hooded sweatshirts on sale from Champion and Ralph Lauren, and I added my logo on top. My door is always open. There's no hierarchy. I don't shut the door and get people to ask permission to come in. I rebranded my brand with art. I always say, I love the first no. That first no gives me the premise for adjusting and correcting to get to the end goal. I'm using the models as people, not just bodies, to make my clothes look good. Work is relaxing to me. I'm happy making things. I like taking details and swapping them around. My context is not leaving fashion or doing anything else. It's subscribing to 4 blank walls and inserting ideas that represent my thinking. That's the liberating part about having an art practice underneath everything that people may have seen from my body of work. It's devoid of commercialism. From the beginning, I approached the idea of design from a grassroots level. I removed this idea that it's somehow detached from the consumer. I basically work at a feverish pace. I don't sleep as much as normal people do. I do everything with an architectural way of thinking. I also use my life experiences to inform the work. Often a conversation or a lunch on the side of the road can be the most impactful inspiration of a fashion collection or an artwork, even more than my degrees that I obtained 20 years ago. One of the biggest premises in my practice is that it's okay to contradict yourself. It's human. Hard work, good ideas, and persistence will undoubtedly lead to success. In my solo work, the only thing I'm trying to display is the ideas, my artistic philosophy, and the generation I'm part of. In a world that's made up of all these different constructs, it's actually the most authentic and pure expression when a work ends up in a space it was made with no regard for. Making the work is important, obviously, but communicating the work is just as important. It's how you make people believe in what you do. I'm working on a vocabulary, an ethos. I'm not just creating an aesthetic. Logos give you a feeling. They add something to the object. I would consider myself a logic, which would be a tier above a logo. I like ready-mades. I make things out of other things. I like that it forces you to think about the context of an object, not just the object itself. I try to find ways to have objects be a conduit for what I have to say. I consider my practice a modern form of graffiti. I love the general air of unknowing around my larger practice. It's my smokescreen. In my practice by design, I think without limits. Messages are meant to be traversed. I might be driven by anxiety. As a creative, you're always fighting against not having any ideas. That might be the driver. As a believer in evolution and the breakdown of barriers, I am using my practice to show that art conversations break down barriers. Art, not art, high, low, etc. In this new era, I often question the validity of even looking at the period of time when high art and mass culture were kept distinctly separate. The only value that I see in keeping those worlds distinct is providing economic benefit, which is fleeting. For me, Off-White is a creative studio, a recording system of time and culture, politics and art. Off-White is my blank canvas. If I have a fully charged phone, I can do anything. Steve Jobs would be psyched, and I run my life through my iPhone. I do believe that, sometimes when I'm distracted is when I think of a good idea. So, you can't always call it a distraction. It's the chaos of life. I base whole collections on a glass of rosé, with a friend or brunch or people watching at Café Select in New York. That's my style of creation. It's inclusive, not exclusive. I embed myself into a culture. I wanted to reapproach these iconic designs in a way that takes the energy of the historical side and replaces it with something that a young person can identify with. I think the internet has created a sort of utopia. I look at it as potential. I regularly use Helvetica in Off-White to reclaim or reprogram a tangible object. I can ready-make fashion better than fashion can be projected to me, and that was the epiphany, to make something in the system that has different ideals than the system, to influence change from a different direction. 1. Watch the news cycle. 2. Understand the news cycle. 3. Insert idea. 4. See what works. 5. Edit idea. 6. Insert new idea. 7. Live in new world. I feel like I'm figuring things out, but I don't feel accomplished yet. I still feel like I'm an intern. I am not the kind of person who is painting in his studio, of course, but within the Instagram generation there is no strict rule. The millennial spirit is, one day you are a stylist, one day you are an art director. Those kids are not waiting for a title to explain who they are. They just do things. We have this thing, social media, that we can use to communicate, and we are just a world of young people, no longer just a niche culture in one city of young people. Kanye wasn't going to put his art form in the hands of the art department at the record label. So he was like, I am going to hire you, and let's literally work on this 24/7 laptop in hand. It's important that I have the ability to design products that can affect change or feel like a good contribution to the world at large. With stamina, there's a part of your brain that just wants to shut off. You know when it wants to. And when you reach that sort of peak, you realize how much your mind can control what your body has a capacity to do. You have to just stare at it, and if you hold that sort of attention, you realize it falls away, because that barrier can't withstand time. If you have an awesome Instagram, I'll follow you, DM you, and say, hey, do you want a job? And if you are self-motivated, you're going to get promoted in 2 seconds, because that's ultimately the shot I wanted when I was a kid. Credit doesn't do anything to me. It literally has no feedback. I don't get any gratification. I don't read any reviews. It doesn't matter. If you removed every classification of a profession, then it becomes about what's your type of character. Some people are more analytical. For some people it's about problem solving. The quotes are basically humor. A couple of people laughed when I brought up quotes. And that's literally the point of that tool, to insert humanity through conversation. You open up when you laugh. I can basically design with a keyboard. I don't need Photoshop or anything else. I use the means that I have to do what I can. I choose to make the reality that I see in my head. Making an impact. My motivation this whole time has been to represent for a generation. I'm still thinking about the kid that couldn't get into fashion shows. Young architects can change the world by not building buildings. I do create some residual noise, but the noise is like jazz music in the background. It actually helps me think of new ideas and provocations based on reactions the work generates. The question of whether something is considered good or bad, what is considered design or not, what is considered art or not. I will probably always have a chip on my shoulder, thinking I have to defend myself against non-believers who think my work isn't valid. Doing it anyway is one of my main motivations. That's what a large part of the constantly working and never sleeping was about, to disprove that little voice in my head that was like, it's impossible, because that was almost destructive to me. My project embedded at the core, I'd say, is humanity and education. We can use design, we can use trends, we can use brands to share good ideas, to share information. My freedom comes from within. Contemporary news dictates a lot. I want to reflect the time. Women's wear gives me an opportunity to be a relevant reflection, to not speak from the male voice. We were coming off the elections while I was conceptualizing the collection, and the women's marches were happening. Like every modern person, I'm seeing things on social media, and I was like, this all needs to be documented in a serious way within fashion, not just a logo on a t-shirt. I have a very particular viewpoint on politics. It is from a young perspective. I feel helpless, but I realize that I am not helpless if I raise my voice. I needed to step up to the plate and contribute something to culture. My work's main objective is to interrupt the pre-existing timeline of contemporary art by challenging its fundamental principles, so that when I'm no longer here there will be more room to redefine the arts than when I started. That's my own measure of success. Not self-service, but serving the whole instead. I believe that coincidence is key, but coincidence is energies coming towards each other. You have to be moving to meet it. You can want to build a spaceship, but you're only building a plane. By the time that you can actually go to space, then you feel something different emotionally. It makes you think about things clearly. I don't believe in titles. I believe in work. The critics and editors at their magazines are not going to go anywhere, but underneath them is a vast set of people who vote with their money. I am interested in this new cultural world that we have been handed, that processes politics and art in a different and democratic way. I take pride in the fact that there's a kid who's living in, Alabama, who never thought something like this was possible for him, almost to the point that he made life and career decisions to find some other thing he was passionate about. But all of a sudden, because I'm here, he knows he can do it too. That's why the Harvard lecture exists. I'm not doing that for myself. I'm doing it to be a beacon of hope for someone. This is the legacy of any artist or creative. You want to make sure that your work makes an impact. Put yourselves in my shoes. It's super weird to have this light on me. I'm not that special. You guys, you have all the resources. You guys are born at a very awesome, distinct time. I think this is the Renaissance. Don't get sort of trapped into this. Everything sucks. The world is coming to an end. That's just an internal mechanism, basically, to chill. When you don't have to put yourself out there, you can wake up every day and come up with excuses. But it's exactly the opposite. I wish that when I was a student, one person would have given me 1 ounce of advice that wasn't, the rest of your career will be an uphill battle, but instead, there are all these shortcuts that you can take. Part of the reason that I'm here is because I would go into the Louis Vuitton store and not be able to afford what I wanted. That aspiration gave me my work ethic. I would go as far as to say that if Louis Vuitton bags weren't as expensive as they are, I wouldn't work as hard as I do now. I didn't see any designer making things that looked like me. I would be in the stores buying fashion. I'd be in the stores buying brands. But it was only once I had the blind naivete to start making things and developing my own language that I was creating things that I would put on the same pedestal as brands. I used to try and prove myself to the naysayers, the critics, to the people who said that Off-White wasn't valid or whatever. But then I realized that those people are powerless when it comes to the community I'm speaking to. Now I focus on the legacy I'll leave behind. I realized I was measuring myself against the brands that have huge corporate backing, and that I could create a brand that could speak to them eye to eye, and then sort of change the tide. I'm interested in random kids from the urban city, middle America, black kids into skateboarding and graffiti, but who want to participate in fashion in the art world. In previous generations, there weren't that many people from the same sort of position that I am, on any sort of scale. I'm trying to inspire a generation of kids who largely weren't taught to believe that you could do these sorts of things. Kanye and I hit these seminal moments where there's a change and a shift in the understanding of what the black projected image is, and how powerfully it can be represented. Fashion is in large part perception. Certain things are placed on certain pedestals just by committees, My goal is to break down certain pedestals and put other things on them and see if they work. I'm looking for something that is open-minded and modern, lead us to better solutions for the future. I'm excited to see what we do in this next chapter, because the strides we made in the last 10 years are too insane. We've seen a culture shift. We've seen skateboarding go from an illegal thing to socially acceptable. We've seen hip-hop go from dangerous to alluring, and I saw an empty seat. No one younger is going to grip it and rip it. I'm going to do the work. In the time that I'm around, whether it's in a cultural position between arts or music or fashion or something like that, I want to represent the most real, the hands-down most real. Part of my concept is to have a dialogue with fashion with a capital F. I have that dialogue by nature of showing what's happening, what's modern, and what's happening in the streets, and showing it next to all the things that we've considered the epitome. We all have to remember it's how the work ages, not how it's received now. If everything is more utopian, I don't know if art would be better. It might be worse. Only good things happen once you begin. The only failure is not to try. Art and creativity. Anyone who has a will to create is an artist. Unraveling life's man-made myths at the earliest age possible is the hard part. Once one has unraveled the prisons we build around our own minds and abilities, there is true creative freedom. After that, the world becomes crystal clear. I grew up thinking images were fact. I now have the impression that images are like memories. They are slippery and fluid. The context of an image, like with anything else, can alter its message. In general, my criteria for design is that the object needs to be relevant, not just for now, but also for tomorrow. If an object is not desirable, I question its reason for existing. I love designed things, or anything made with a POV. Any art I own gives me tons of vibes at the moment. Authenticity today is something that has roots or origins in a specific past. In my artwork, my main goal is to redefine what we consider to be generic, to operate on the version of the work from the community that designed the original, which can be a murky concept in human history. My brand started in the streets and the alleys of the internet. I come from a different school of thought about clothing. I understand people see it as fashion. To me, this is an art practice. One day I'd love for someone to refer to me as an artist. Every medium is equal. The internet has democratized information and equally the need to actually own. If you ask me, it is the Wild West for artists to dictate new modes of operating. The black artist is defining the present, showing this new form of expression in an old space that's never seen anything like it before. An artwork is a pure idea attached to an existing rationale. An artwork for the art world is any idea attached to an invoice. You can't hide from artists being brands. If you squint your eyes, essentially an artist's signature is like a brand. I had a wish list of female voices and Jenny Walzer's was at the top because it's a non-wavering voice that creates powerful messages that are also easy to understand and accept. I was completely inspired by Jenny Holzer's willingness to work together, which in turn made the process very invigorating and precise. We both felt compelled to address the current political climate. We wanted to make our point of view center stage, let people have a moment with our expressions, and to have them exist. Two heads are better than one is something I firmly believe in. Collaboration is what happens with everyone in my offices, and I believe in extending that outwards. I look for someone that has an authentic voice, that together we could make something that we couldn't make individually. Life is collaboration. Where I think art can be sort of misguided is that it propagates this idea of itself as a solo love affair, one person, one idea, no one else involved. I wanted to be an architect. I thought it was sexy. It checked all my personal boxes, but then I found that it's a genre of design which doesn't keep up to my pace, and doesn't offer the same kind of gratification. When people try to label what I do and say like DJ or like architect or fashion designer, I find it pointless. It's all just different sorts of creative. It's only in the modern sense that everybody started categorizing architect, researcher, interior designer, landscape architect, industrial designer, painter, graphic designer. They're all just terms. You get titled this and you can do that. You could be a writer, you could be a painter, but architecture to me is a term for all things, holistic design, having a point of view. It is a myth that creative projects exclusively get created in a test tube. You don't have to sit in your studio and throw a dart and hope that it lands on the bullseye. If you actually walk up to the dartboard, you can just place it in the bullseye. I'm always reluctant to be anti-evolution. My art practice is the convergence of all creative disciplines into one matter. Sometimes you need to rearrange the furniture in your head. Over-intellectualizing the mundane is my creative exercise. Your ego does not want to fail, so why would you put forth your ego? I look at everything I own as an art piece. Irony is a tool for modern creativity. There's a reason why we all probably look at 60 memes a day. If we thought of creativity like tech, without the iPod 1, would we get to the iPhone 7? I like the conundrums. Nothing is fact. I think my personal work is to make sure the everyday things have a design or an opinion attached to it, or done with a specific point of view. My entry point is streetwear. I also think of the brain as a muscle. Creative problem solving is an exercise. You can't simply be non-creative for 3 months and then sit in a brainstorm session trying to merge ideas. I feel like now is a tremendous time in culture. I feel like it's the Renaissance. I feel like Bernini just sculpting away, defining a moment of enlightenment. What seems preposterous actually becomes the new norm. I'm just doing it because I like to stay busy and creative. If I run into someone in a club or during the day at brunch, I'm always thinking in my head, man, let's do something together. I love developing ideas. Ultimately, this became my world by accident. Trying to avoid a day job by having ideas, 30 ideas a day. You create art so that people can build on top of it. I create from a point of view of resonance. I made this, I don't even know if anyone bought it, but I know as soon as it left my idea that it resonates. Perfectionism doesn't advance anything, ironically. On one hand, I would want to push something that makes it easier for artists to be artists, but on the other hand, a lot of the time artists become who they are because they have something to battle against. You just have to come with a unique perspective, which is actually simple. Look at the market, see what's out there and propose something that's a point of difference. Do opposites. It just feels better. We don't sit around to critique, we create. Chronology. 1980. Virgil Abloh is born in Rockford, Illinois, to Ghanaian immigrant parents. He immerses himself in skate, rock and roll, and hip-hop culture, all of which he will draw on throughout his career. 1998. Abloh DJs as Flat White at festivals, fashion parties, and rap gigs, even playing opening sets for Travis Scott. 2002. Graduates from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. Abloh is introduced to Kanye West at the age of 22 and becomes his creative consultant, working on tour merch, album covers, and set design. 2006. Receives a master's degree in architecture from Illinois Institute of Technology, where he was introduced to a curriculum, originally established by Mies van der Rohe, formed from the notions of Bauhaus, which enabled Abloh to learn how to converge the fields of arts, craft, and design. These notions, merged with contemporary culture, make up his interdisciplinary practice today. 2009. Abloh and Kanye West intern at Fendi, earning $500 per month to learn the basics of fashion design. 2010. Officially assumes the role of creative director at Donda, West Creative Agency. 2011. Abloh Art directs the album Watch the Throne by Jay-Z and West, an achievement that earns him a Grammy nomination. The album cover is designed by Riccardo Tisci, then the creative director of Givenchy, a role Abloh was rumored to be up for after Tisci's departure in 2017. 2012 launches Pyrex Vision, his first line of luxury-priced streetwear, which sets him on the path to creating Off-White. Also this year, he launches Bin Trill with Matthew Williams of ALX and Heron Preston, which is eventually sold and helps fund future projects. 2013, Abloh founds Off-White, which quickly becomes one of the most sought-after brands in the world, combining ideas of streetwear, luxury, art, music, and travel. 2014 launches women's wear for Off-White and begins showing his men's and women's collections during Paris Fashion Week. 2015. Abloh's women's wear operation gains steam when Beyoncé wears a palm print sweatshirt with the word Nebraska on it, an homage to Raf Simons's Fall 2002 Virginia Creepers collection, in Nicki Minaj's video for Feeling Myself. Off-White is nominated as one of the top 8 finalists for the LVMH Prize in Paris. 2016. Abloh is inducted into the Business of Fashion 500, the people shaping the global fashion industry list, and is one of the top 5 nominees in the International Urban Luxury Brand category at the British Fashion Awards. Also this year he launches his first furniture collection Grey Area in Milan, Italy, and curates an exhibition from his furniture collection for Design Miami at Art Basel. 2017, Abloh drops the 10 collaboration with Nike, winning Shoe of the Year at the FN Achievement Awards. The shoes are hailed by many as the best sneakers of 2017. He is also nominated as one of the top 5 nominees in the Swarovski Award for Emerging Talent category, the CFDA Awards, and is selected as a special guest to show his Spring-Summer 2018 men's Off-White CO Virgil Abloh collection in Florence, Italy, during Pitti Immagine Uomo 92. He also wins the Urban Luxe Brand Award at the British Fashion Awards. Abloh works with Ben Kelly on a touring set that was exhibited at the Open Eye Gallery, Liverpool, England, and then at the Somerset House in London. Abloh also collaborates with Ben Kelly on a new installation called Ruin, which was displayed at Store Studios in London. Delivers lectures at Harvard Graduate School of Design, Columbia University Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, and the Rhode Island School of Design. Wins the International Designer of the Year Award at the GQ Men of the Year Awards. 2018. Abloh is named Artistic Director of Menswear for Louis Vuitton, the first African American to lead the brand's menswear line. He is also named one of Time's 100 most influential people in the world. Collaborates with Takashi Murakami on exhibitions at the Gagosian Gallery in London, Paris, and Los Angeles. In March, Abloh showcases his exhibition Pay-Per-View at Kaikai Kiki Gallery in Tokyo. For the second consecutive year, Abloh wins the Urban Luxe Brand Award at the British Fashion Awards. Abloh is also nominated as one of the top 5 nominees in the Women's Wear Designer of the Year and Menswear Designer of the Year categories at the CFDA Awards. 2019. Figures of Speech, an artwork-focused retrospective, opens at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, Illinois. The exhibition features new work alongside unseen works from his past. Also this year he collaborates with IKEA to design a mix of everyday lifestyle objects, designed to make a statement in a first home. Abloh is nominated as a top 5 nominee in the Accessory Designer of the Year and Menswear Designer of the Year categories at the CFDA Awards. 2020. Abloh showcases his exhibition Efflorescence at Galerie Creo Paris and Galerie Creo London. From 2019-21, the Figures of Speech exhibition travels to the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, Georgia, the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston, Massachusetts, and the Brooklyn Museum in Brooklyn, New York. Acknowledgements. First and foremost, my thanks go to Virgil Abloh, to whom the words and thoughts on these pages belong. It is an honor to be a part of this unique opportunity to showcase his incredible mind and voice. My heartfelt thanks to Athithan Selvendran for his extraordinary presence and support throughout this project, and to Daniel Belizio for his assistance. I would also like to acknowledge my friends Lenny McGurr, Daniel Arsham, and Sky Gelletley, all 3 of whom were instrumental to this project, and who gave me the inspiration to include and connect Virgil with the ISM series. Thank you as well to Shilei Wang, Nicola Guzijan, and Pete Brockman. My sincere appreciation to the entire team at Princeton University Press, especially Michelle Comey, Christy Henry, Terry O'Prey, Kathy Slavinsky, and Kenneth Guai. We remain extremely grateful to PUP for their continued professionalism, encouragement, and passion for our projects together throughout the years. Very special thanks to Fiona Graham for her invaluable research and diligent organization of this publication. Thanks as well to Susan Delson, Enrique Menendez, and Carl Cyprian for their editorial assistance, and to Amanda Skoldes and Amelia Tekentin for their supporting research. Thanks also to Franklin Sermons and to Kevin Wong, Keith Esteler, Sarah Sperling, Noah Wunsch, Vanessa Lee, and Man Huang. My sincere thanks to Taliesin Thomas for her amazing assistance on this and many other projects, and to Stephen Rodriguez and John Pelosi for their continued support. My thanks as well to Paul Schindler for his support. Finally, I give all my bottomless gratitude to my amazing wife, Abby, and to my wonderful children, Justin, Ethan, Ellie, and Jonah, for their love and encouragement. As always, I give endless love and thanks to my mother, Judith. Larry Warsh. Virgil Abloh is an artist, architect, engineer, creative director, and fashion designer. After earning a degree in civil engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, he completed a master's degree in architecture at the Illinois Institute of Technology. It was here that he learned not only about design principles but also crafted the principles of his art practice. He studied a curriculum devised by Mies van der Rohe on a campus he had designed. Currently he is the artistic director of menswear at Louis Vuitton, and the chief creative director and head designer of menswear and womenswear concepts titled Off-White. Larry Warsh has been active in the art world for more than 30 years as a publisher and artist collaborator. An early collector of Keith Haring and Jean-Michel Basquiat, Warsh was a lead organizer for the exhibition Basquiat, The Unknown Notebooks, which debuted at the Brooklyn Museum, New York in 2015, and later traveled to several American museums. He has loaned artworks by Haring and Basquiat from his collection to numerous exhibitions worldwide, and he served as a curatorial consultant on Keith Haring, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Crossing Lines for the National Gallery of Victoria. The founder of Museums magazine, Warsh has been involved in many publishing projects, and is the editor of several other titles published by Princeton University Press, including Basquiat-Isms, 2019, Haring-Isms 2020, Futura-Isms 2021, Abloh-Isms 2021, Arsham-Isms 2021, Jean-Michel Basquiat, The Notebooks 2017, and 2 books by Ai Weiwei, Human Entity 2018 and Weiwei-Isms 2012. Warsh has served on the board of the Getty Museum Photographs Council, and was a founding member of the Basquiat Authentication Committee until its dissolution in 2012.